Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's One Piece Treasure Cruise video, we have the third episode of One Piece Treasure Cruise Legend History, and if you want to see a character of your choice being featured in future episodes, suggest it down in the comments below. For this episode though, we have Eustass Kid. Originally from South Blue, he is the captain of the Kid Pirates, a part of the worst generation as well, who all reached the Sabaody archipelago before the One Piece time skip. He fought alongside other supernovas there, but eventually fled, keeping a low profile after that during the War of Marineford. One of the most driven and ambitious characters in the whole series. His drive also led him to challenge Shanks twice, but well, that didn't really go too great for him the first time. That is actually how he lost his hand. Before facing Shanks again, he decided to create an alliance with two other supernovas, Hawkins and Apu, but the plan got derailed by Kaido, who captured all of them. Kid was a prisoner of Kaido, while the two other supernovas worked for him. Eventually, he reunited with Luffy and his second-in-command, Killer, in the prison of Wano. They escaped and headed to the Battle of Onigashima, where he took revenge from Apu and fought another emperor, Big Mom, with the help of Trafalgar Law. After the events of Wano, Kid still had unfinished business with Shanks, who he challenged again in Elbaf, and that didn't go too well for him either. In One Piece Treasure Cruise, Eustass Kid has a total of 6 legends, representing some of his most memorable fights. Kid actually got his first legend in the game pretty late, in my opinion, since he started getting legends from the events of Wano. We didn't see a Kid legend before that, which is kind of a shame, but here we had a very good release, because Kid, even though he focused around Dex character, he was one of the first super type Dex characters, and tried working around bomb and super bomb slots, making them very interesting, especially with super bomb slots being non-manipulatable. Both his 5-star and 6-star artworks are from the events of the Wano prison, and then he got a super evolution which actually improved the character by a lot, still keeping the Wano theme in the illustration, and to be fair, this was one of the best super evolutions we have seen. Great direct upgrade, not just based on multipliers. He, instead of just boosting Dex characters, started also boosting Driven as a captain. He still remained a super type Dex character, but he also gained much needed utility other than the slot manipulation. Very strong threshold removal from his special and damage reduction removal from his captain ability. With just his second legend in One Piece Treasure Cruise, Kid not only was one of the first characters that had a final tap ability, but he was also one of the very early Super Sugofest characters. He released alongside Luffy and Law, where the 3 captains were fighting Kaido's fleet before the main fight in Onigashima, and that's exactly where his 2 illustrations in the 5-star and 6-star evolutions are originating from. Alongside Law, they were the 2 most unique ones out of the batch, and I would say that Kid brought something new to the table, not only with his final tap being able to target or hit actually multiple enemies at once, but with his special as well, because based on Cruise HP, it had the ability to be activated 3 total times to get the maximum out of it. So for Strength Striker and Driven characters, he was a true damage boosting beast. With its full potential, the special can provide an attack boost, an ore boost and a color affinity boost, but this character overall lacks utility. For his third legend, Kid actually kept innovating in One Piece Treasure Cruise because he was one of the first super tandem characters in the entire game, and he introduced a new mechanic, the ability to actually super lock slots only being able to get unlocked by hitting perfect hits with your characters, otherwise they kept their slot for the remainder of the quest. This is another striker and driven focused character here, and his illustrations are once again from the battles of Wano, specifically from the main, or the closer to the main Onigashima battle I guess, versus Apu, and then with his 6-star form, the one later in the story. And funnily enough, Kid and Law keep going hand to hand here. First they got their Super Sugofest characters, now they both get Super Tandem characters, and they both have the ability for a chain tap timing bonus to be provided for specific classes, a buff that would go into great combination with chain addition and chain boundaries as well. Captain Kid joined the multiple Super Sugofest exclusive club when he got the second Super Sugofest character of his, a dual unit alongside Law, which is very fitting. Both the illustrations are from when they challenged Big Mom in the Battle of Onigashima, and not only do they have a super swap, they also have a combined special. This is also the only character in the game that can allow Kid to obtain the Psy color, even though Law is Psy, their combined form can be Psy as well. Even though I wouldn't say this is one of the best Super Sugofest releases, especially coming after Gear 5 Luffy, it's not really easy to not be overshadowed by him. But to be fair, still a very decent character, not only able to provide chain multiplier growth rate from the swap and super swap, but also able through their special to completely ignore defense down immunity and apply 100% defense down to the enemy, one of the few characters that could do that, and then great slot manipulation and also damage boosting, but only for Psy and Int. No classes included here. Another dual unit followed for Captain Kid, but this time we have him in the illustration fighting alongside his second in command, Killer. This character also has a combined special and a super swap actually, and they do focus around making bomb and super bomb slots favorable, but also providing them with their swaps. Not from the special though. We see them focusing on dex and int boosting, and they do actually contain utility, with threshold damage reduction from their swapping and damage reduction removal from their special. And as far as their damage boosting goes, they can be extremely helpful with their chain tap timing bonus for dex and int, and also chain boundaries that they can provide for 2 turns. But on the flip side, they also have color affinity boosting in their kit, which is not the best type of damage boosting, but I guess can be helpful with color advantage. And for Kid's final legend, we have a versus unit. Majority of them when they release, they are very strong units. This one is a very decent one as well. Of course, the moment is from his second encounter versus Shanks. So here we have Shanks versus Kid. And while Shanks focuses more on slasher characters, Kid's side is the one focusing more on shooter characters. So the more shooters you have in the crew, the more he boosts the crew as a captain, the more damage you can do. Overall, the more shooter characters for Kid specifically and slashers for Shanks, the better the character becomes overall, not just damage wise, even utility wise, because with 4 or more shooters, Kid removes 10 turns of bind from the captain ability. With 6 or more, he gets special cooldown reduction and more perks. For his special, he can ignore immunity, apply paralysis, and then provide a conditional attack boost again. He can help with chain boosting and has utility in his kit, being able to remove or reduce defense up and damage reduction by either 10 or 6 turns depending on how many shooters are in the crew, so definitely one of Kid's strongest legends. And now that we have seen all of his legends, let's go over some fun statistics about Kid in One Piece Treasure Cruise. But first, let me clarify, if a Super Evolution is a direct upgrade, it counts as 1 with the 6-star form, but if it is a side grade, as 2, and for dual units, single form or dual form counts, and if something, a type or a class, is in both, it obviously counts once. As far as the color distribution goes for him, he has 2 strength characters with one of them being super type, 2 dex ones with one of them being super type, his first one, no Q legends, 1 psi character coming from his combination with Law in the dual form, and 2 int. So even though he does not have a legend of every color, he is missing Q, the distribution of colors is pretty even. For his classes, 6 driven characters with one of them being super class, his most dominant class in the game obviously, 3 striker characters, 1 shooter, and that is his versus unit, so one of his strongest, 1 free spirit appearance, and also 1 powerhouse alongside killer. He has 4 super specials and 2 super swaps, and for the banner distribution, he has 3 super Sugofest legends, no anniversary, treasure map, or Kizuna legends, and then 3 normal ones. And out of his 6 legends, he appears in 3 of them solo, one of which has a Super Evolution 2, 2 dual units, and 1 versus unit with Shanks as well. And now, keeping in mind everything we said so far, let's rank the Kid legends in a tier list based on the release meta impact they had in One Piece Treasure Cruise. V1 Kid goes into the A tier, V2 Super Sugofest Kid will also go into the A tier, but over V1 Kid. I think we also kind of overestimated Kid's final tap ability when he released. It ended up not being as good as players initially thought, so I don't really think I can place him into the S tier. Super Tandem V3 Kid I will also place A tier, but over the other 2 versions. So far, every Kid release is bringing something new into the game, and that's why the meta impact keeps being the same pretty much, but all great releases to be honest, because he introduces something new, obviously it will have an impact into the game, and a lot of Kid legends, as we mentioned, did that. For the Super Evolution, I have to go with S tier, not only with the class additions, but the utility addition with Threshold was also amazing. Very good Super Evolution was also used quite a lot when it released. Both of his dual units follow the same story. Both will go into the A tier. I will place Law and Kid over his other Super Sugofest, and I will place Kid and Killer bottom of A tier, because even though they were Pirating Adventures unit, they could still be plug and play in multiple teams because of the utility and the chain boundaries alongside the slide slot manipulation they could provide. And finally, Shanks vs Kid will go into the top of S tier, being one of the best Kid units ever released. For the current value tier list, things will definitely be shaken up here. V1 Kid, the Super Evolution, since it is a direct upgrade, will drop a tier, going into A, still can be used because of the good utility. V2 Kid, the Super Sugofest he got, is definitely in need of a Super Evolution. I will place him into the C tier, he is almost never used at this point in the game. Super Tandem Kid will also go into the A tier, can be a very useful unit because he has the knees with the slots, but also is able to provide damage boosting. Law and Kid will go into the top of A tier, Killer and Kid will go, I think, in A tier as well, somewhere here, and finally Shanks vs Kid reigning supreme at the top, of course, being the best possible Kid unit in the game, and you still have to keep in mind that having Shanks vs Kid means you can also use the versus Shanks side, not just versus Kid, so we have to take that into consideration in these listings. Overall though, Kid has seen some very good legends and some very good releases introducing stuff into One Piece Treasure Cruise. But for the final tier list, let's rank his top 5 artworks in the game. And I have to admit, a lot of them do look similar, but I think V1 Kid is goated here. the 6-star form artwork is his best one, in my opinion. Then I will go with the Super Tandem Kid one. Then the 5-star form of V1 Kid and the 6+ form of V1 Kid, hence why I'm saying he's goated. And then I will say the one where he's with Killer, because the versus Shanks one and the versus Low one, I don't even think he's the main character in his artwork, so I can't really place it in the top 5. They're not bad artworks, but I think the ones I listed are just better, at least in my opinion. And that is the full One Piece Treasure Cruise Legend history and some rankings for Eustass Kid. You can see similar videos for other characters by clicking the ones on the screen right now, and if you enjoy them, definitely leave a like, I would really appreciate it. And as always, thank you so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.